mustn't call me Mr. Johnson.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Good. I hear myself speak. Good evening, folks. We did open our Board of Selectmen meeting for May 10, 2021 at 6 o'clock, and then went into executive session in the intent to return to open session afterwards. Executive session we went into was to discuss litigation strategy with respect to case of 3137 LLC et al., which is Embers and Port versus the town of Harwich et al., United States District Court, number 121 CB 10437. If discussing the matter in open session will have a detrimental effect on the town's litigation position, and the chair so declares. We had that discussion and exited the executive session and returned to open session around 6:31, and we're now in open session. I would ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move next to Joe and the COVID-19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll turn it right over to our Director of Public Health, Dr. Katie O'Neill.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, I can hear myself being.
We can hear you here.
Okay. Jamie, is there a way that you?
Echo.
I hear feedback. All I can hear is myself. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It was really nice seeing you all in person at town meeting this weekend. I actually have some good news tonight for the first time in a while. As of today, we are only tracking 3 active cases. And as of last Friday, our positivity rate has dropped to 3.02%. We have 6,639 fully vaccinated individuals in town, which is great progress. We're really starting to get there. Last Thursday, the Board of Health met to discuss the current mask mandate on Route 28 from Bank Street to Lower County Road, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The board unanimously voted to uphold the current order for the time being. They will revisit this again at a later date, but wanted to be cautious and make sure that the numbers remain trending in the right direction before they make any changes. The state announced that effective today, some outdoor venues can be reopened, such as ballparks, road races, and other amateur sports. Singing indoors is also allowed with strict distancing. And another exciting update is that Brooks Free Library will resume allowing patrons back inside the library for grab-and-go visits starting next Monday, May 17th. The initial schedule will be Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and then Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Masks will be required. Patrons will have access to materials on both the first and second floors, including the public computers. The full plan can be found on the library's website, as well as by phone if someone would rather call to get the details. So all in all, for the time being, things are certainly moving in the right direction and feeling a little more normal. Does the board have any questions for me on my report?
I don't. Any questions or comments?
No.
You're always welcome as long as you bring good news.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Welcome. Cindy, business?
Well, let's just continue with the good news. How's that?
Okay.
We're starting to work on the plan to reopen the visitor center. Memorial Day to Columbus Day, the Visitor Center will be open. We're going to once again do welcome bags. We've started to collect member brochures, menus from the restaurants, brochures, as well as we'll have in there the walking map the chamber produces, as well as the new magazine. Also, we've expanded our distribution of the magazine this year. I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not, but it will be located in TF Green Airport as well as Bass Pro in Foxborough. And for the third year, Mystic, Connecticut Visitor Center. These are 3 locations that the Harwich Chamber is the only local Cape Cod chamber that is in those locations. So not exclusive, but we are the only ones. So we're the first to be down in all of those locations. So we're excited for that. As well as more good news, the chamber will once again be selling beach stickers for both residents and non, and the transfer station access. So we're just getting that all in place, putting up plexi and getting these safety protocols in place. Great news this week also with 4 new members joining the chamber. Super excited for them to get started with their businesses. And then I had something else. There are job postings on our website members have sent to us. Just to start early in the season, I want to throw out there that we hope everyone will just show a little patience. It's going to be a busy year, but we do want to remind everyone that our businesses went through a lot to stay open and to get ready to welcome all of the guests. So other than that, it looks like it's going to be a good week this week with some sunshine. So that's all for tonight.
Thank you, Cindy. Ed?
Do we know who the 4 new businesses are?
Oh, thank you, Ed. Yes, we actually have Miss Tessa LeBlanc, who is a realtor, who is joining as a full business, a new bookstore that's going next to the Mad Minnow and 3 Monkeys, as well as a wonderful artist that has a studio in the Cultural Center, Bernadette Waystek, who we're also having a piece of her artwork along with other artists showcasing in the Visitor Center. And then Haberdash, it's a boutique in one of the old sections of Cape Associates Real Estate. So those are our 4 newest members to join us.
Ed?
And just one follow-up question with your welcome bags. It's looking like the Cranberry Festival will be able to put on some activities this summer, including the courtyard concerts at the Cultural Center. I think the craft fair in August, and some probably much scaled down, but some version of the festival in September. Can we produce a little slip to go in your bags for those?
Absolutely. We are encouraging all of our members to please provide us with information. What I'm trying to do is not have people touch all of the information in the visitor center. We'll give them everything. So if you are a member of the chamber, we absolutely encourage you. My back conference room is looking like a warehouse, and we'll soon be having assembly lines to put these together. But yes, please do.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
And I will be negotiating a table at that September festival for us to sell the Harwich Opoly game that has sold out.
Well, we can do that, certainly.
Thank you, Cindy. Next on the agenda is public comments and announcements. Anyone have issues there? Okay, we'll move on to a new business. And Joe, I know you want a discussion, a debrief of the it seems like a long time ago, but Saturday's meeting.
Yeah, it certainly does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I handed out to you this evening just a quick recap of the outcome of the articles. But I think the thing I would like to highlight is the exceptional work, as always, of our town moderator, getting us through the cold. And from the moment the first motion was made to the motion to adjourn was voted on was 2 hours, 43 minutes. And within that, I think there was quite a bit of ample discussion, and I'm very pleased with the outcome generally. Now we're on to the annual town meeting of 2022. Not that anyone asks, but that's in
Okay.
357 days.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel compelled to say this because you're too modest here. The town clerk was involved. All sorts of departments were involved. Your staff was involved, and certainly you were involved as the town administrator. And I thought everybody did a superb job. It was just really a second town meeting in a row where I felt like we represented really well.
Joe, this is Don mentioned the second meeting. This is the second one where you've put together for us a town meeting notebook with all the motions, and that helps us follow along as well. So that's a nice, I know it's not easy to do all that, put it together.
Thank you, but I think the output and the value of it is, makes the exercise well worth it. If I could build off of what Selectman Howell just said as well, I totally agree that the success of town meeting is because of the team that worked on it, and it was truly a team effort, a collaborative effort, and that's from administration and finance, Board of Selectmen, straight on down throughout the organization. So I'm thrilled with the way we comported ourselves, and I look forward to having participated in a indoor town meeting, the quote regular sort, someday in the future.
Yeah.
Because for the last 2 years, this is what we've done.
I will only add one more thing, is we need to applaud those who attended, because it was not,
Yes, absolutely.
I know myself, and I think some of us were freezing.
You got some windburn.
Got some windburn, and to be in the cold and the wind and hang through there was remarkable. Ed?
Yeah, those that attended all deserve some sort of duty pay for that. But you know, the book that you produced was really helpful. Of course, would have been more helpful if the wind wasn't whisking it ahead 50 pages one way or another.
That's right.
Other comments? Michael?
Yeah, just hats off to everybody involved. I thought the town meeting went very, very smooth, other than the cold. And then specifically to town meeting, I would ask that we bring back sooner rather than later Article 33. I believe the intent of town meeting was very clear, and I think they want to pursue the purchase of that 31 acres. So I think that calls for a meeting with Harwich Conservation Trust, as well as CPC and the board.
And the real estate and open space.
Real estate and open space, so that we can really come to terms with what went wrong. I noticed that CPC's taken a bit of a hit on this, and I would just say, my opinion is, it's not CPC's fault. And there was a change in the article, and from what the initial public hearing was, at least in my mind. So I would ask that one come back sooner than rather than later, because I think that the sellers of that property are on a deadline. I also do not want to give up our, I believe it's 62A, Joe, right of first refusal.
61A.
61A, right of first refusal. So rather than get into any language like that, I think it'd be incumbent upon us to meet sooner rather than later to air out what went wrong and maybe get a fall town meeting to approve this, if that's what the voters want. Second one I would ask that we bring back is the East Harwich Methodist Cemetery. That also, we got a late legal opinion on that. I think that there's some strong arguments to be made on improvements to that cemetery. I think Don's points were very clear. We don't own it, so we really should start with the Methodist Church and get their blessing and have them be an applicant. But in my mind, it would be nice to do some work in a cemetery that could use the work. So I would ask that cemetery director, maybe the Methodist Church, or maybe we save that for after, but we come to grips with what needs to be done, supported or not supported. Lastly, the Sand Pond Revitalization Project. Though I was against the article, I think that there's some merit to site improvement, and I think that there was a suggestion made that money should be coming out of the Recs budget. Given that we're only talking about dead trees, removal of a building, I think with our DPW, we should look for ways to get the site work done and the fence purchased, whether we have to come back with CPC funds to do that, the 1/3 of that project that wasn't playground. I think that we as a board should do some minor improvements over there. So those would be the only three things that stood out to me that I think we should get on an agenda soon.
Okay. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Any other comments? I'll move to old business. And since this is discussion of the Port Western again, I will start with reading our rule of necessity before we go into this discussion. Next on the agenda is deliberation involving the court case 3137 LLC et al. Versus Town of Harwich et al., in which each member of the Board of Selectmen is named individually as defendant and may have a financial interest in the litigation unless conflict of interest. The board is the town's executive authority, and no other board or official can represent the town's interest in this matter. Therefore, upon the advice of town council, I am invoking the rule of necessity in order for the board to act on this matter. As stated, my financial interest is that I am named personally as a defendant. I ask that each member identify for the record what their financial interest is. Once this is done, all board members are eligible to participate in the discussion of this litigation. And I'll follow up with that. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My financial interest is that I am named individually in the lawsuit.
Ed?
Yeah, my financial interest is that I also am one of the named individuals in the lawsuit.
Michael?
My conflict is also that of financial, as I am named in the lawsuit as
Okay.
well.
The first item on the agenda is discussion and possible vote to reconsider. I'll remind everyone that we do have a hearing on Wednesday. This is not that. This is much simpler. We took a vote last meeting, and this was a discussion. Do we wish to reconsider that vote? And Joel, for the record, could you just read to us what we voted on the last meeting? Not to put you on the spot, but we'll put that in the...
I'm just checking to see if we included that in the materials for the board's discussion tonight. My recollection is that when the board came upon the application for a request for expansion for 2021, that the board did not adopt that. So it was not accepted by the board.
Right.
For this particular establishment.
For this particular
year.
establishment.
Correct.
There's discussion.
I'll start.
Michael?
You know, in the 11th hour, literally 11:30, we agreed to give the liquor license to this establishment, and we agreed to continue the hearing on outdoor entertainment. I know it was a strong push by Attorney Tomlinson at the end to get us to approve the tent, and that was not adopted. There was discussion, however, of Attorney Tomlinson and his clients providing the board with a site plan, and that we would review the site plan and that we would discuss it this week. At that same conversation, I said that I would not be voting on any additional anything on the meeting on the 10th, that more than likely it would go to the 12th. But I would certainly entertain conversation about the proposed site plan and questions from the board, myself, and maybe just a narrative from Attorney Tomlinson. What I'm not interested in is I'm not interested in the behavior that we received at the last meeting, and given that this is a public meeting, not a public hearing, only the chair decides who speaks and when. So I know that we were given a list of people that wanted to speak tonight, but I think with Larry explaining this is not a hearing, that's coming up on Wednesday. I hope that we can do away with interruptions and just have a general conversation of this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I personally will ask that the chairman end the discussion, and that we'll move on to Wednesday night.
Yep. I will, others? Don?
No, I agree with what Michael said. And
Yeah.
frankly, I'm listening to hear what circumstances would have changed from the vote we took relative to what this property with the tent contributes to the problems that we're actually discussing in the hearings on Wednesday.
Because to be specific, The way it stands now is the tent is not approved.
That's correct, and the tent not only housed additional seats, additional patrons, additional pouring capacity, entertainment. So to me, it's part and parcel of what we're discussing about how much we can control it. So I'm waiting to hear tonight if there's anything new to be added to the discussion.
Ed? And now I'll get to you, Mr. Thomason.
No, for now,
Okay.
I'll reserve my comments.
Mr. Thomason, I'll give you a chance to weigh in. Remember, again, we will address this on Wednesday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As requested by the board, I emailed last week a proposed or revised site plan which illustrates certain improvements to the outdoor expanded dining operation at the port. If you have that drawing in front of you, I'm happy to go over it. And I hope it will address some of the comments and the questions that were raised last time, in particular about the size of the tent or the capacity of the seating and locations of the outdoor bar. As Mr. McCaskill noted last time, there is only one outdoor bar. Mr. Howell's reference to 4 outdoor bars is simply incorrect. There's only one outdoor bar. It is affectionately referred to as the Naughty Bar, and it's located at the rear of the main structure, closer to 28. At the
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me,
We'll call it
Mr. Thomason. Let me ask, Don has a point of information.
Yeah, as a point of information, I never said that there were 4 outside bars. I said that the Instagram site that the port maintained said that there were 2 outside and 2 inside bars. I repeat that again tonight as a point of information. That was not what I said the other night. I never said that I said they had 4 outside bars, ever.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Just as a point of clarification, I should have said that your comment was reflected more towards the magnitude of the expansion. I'm simply suggesting that there has been no expansion of the licensed premise other than the outdoor tent, which was reviewed and approved by this board last year. As you may recall, in early October last year, this board met on October 5th and continued its discussion to October 19th, where a written policy was approved by this board automatically extending the outdoor expanded dining for all those licensees who had previously applied and were approved by the board, of which the port was one. The tent that is illustrated on the drawing measures 20 feet by 60 feet. That is unchanged from last year. The tent this year, however, physically, as much as is physically possible, is being shifted away from the rear boundary, which is closest to abutters, the Veranos family and the Sherry family. In addition to shifting the tent approximately 10 feet closer to 28, there will be a plastic end on that tent to help control noise. The tree wall, which will be installed along the perimeter fence that divides the property from the abutters, will include 8 to 10 foot Leland cypress trees that grow rapidly and fill out to make a nice vegetative buffer. Those are not only very costly, but they're permanent, and they will improve the privacy to the neighbors as well as help deflect sound. Likewise, a tree wall is being installed on the corner property that sort of directs in the direction of Mr. Ganley's property, which there is a few trees there, but not a tree wall. And so while there is an existing split rail fence, it's low and doesn't serve as any noise barrier. So the establishment is proposing to install a tree wall there as well. Likewise, you'll note on there that the establishment is preserving 7 parking spaces. In addition, there are operational constraints being placed by the applicant that are voluntary, which should go a very long way to improving, quite frankly, any patron noise that was of concern last year. And I won't get into the issues about how the establishment wasn't afforded notice of that, but certainly if the establishment was afforded more timely notice of it, they certainly would have made operational improvements to address those issues. And so obviously, as we stare down the final week or so before the weather really turns nice, I would note that the establishment relied on the board's automatic extension from last October and secured its tent. I know Selectman McCaskill made a comment during the October 5th hearing that licensees needed to rely on the board's action to secure leases on the tents. As you know, the pandemic was of an urgent nature, that tents became very hard to come by. And now that weddings are going to reopen this summer, availability of tents is even far more constrained. As a result, the establishment secured its extended lease of this tent. It costs nearly $4,000 per month, and that is a cost that they are contracted to bear. Likewise, shifting the tent 10 feet in the parking lot.
Yeah. Joel, can I interrupt you just briefly? Thank you for that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little off topic tonight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the primary concern we have with the tent is related to the noise issues we have the abutter, which would be part of our discussion next week on the entertainment license. So why would not this discussion be better put Wednesday when we address the entertainment license and the ramifications of the noise and hours, and which the tent is everything we hear is that's a significant issue regarding the noise discussion. So my suggestion is, I appreciate your comment, but my point is, seems this is better off going back to the hearing.
Another point of information.
Yeah, Don and Ed, Michael, rather.
As far as I understand it, the application that Mr. Tomlinson's, the people he represents submitted, does not call for service to commence until May 28th, not next week. I mean, we've got the form right here. That's not correct. It would be for next week.
Michael?
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to your question.
Respond to that, then I'll ask.
It's actually a statement rather than a question. The actual application says May 28th. It's right here.
Mr. Howell, I was responding to the chairman's question, not to your statement.
Okay. Michael?
Chairman, you asked.
Yeah, excuse me. Let me have Michael weigh in, and I'll ask you you can respond to the general discussion.
Well, these might go hand in hand. Larry, we as a board did not vote to support the extension of outdoor table service. And we did put it on the agenda tonight for a discussion. As much as we want to talk about noise, which I think it's a very relevant conversation to this tent, more so than next week's conversation, at least at this point. I think that we vet out as much as we can vet out tonight. And as I said from the outset, I'm not inclined to make a decision tonight. And another board member would certainly then have to make the recommendation for reconsideration to go forward. But I don't see any reason why we should add the tent into the entertainment conversation on Wednesday night. The tent is a standalone, and as I've said from the beginning, it's a gift. COVID gift package to the businesses from the Board of Selectmen, voted by the Board of Selectmen. And part of tonight's conversation, obviously, is emails that we've received and with complaints, still complaints, and more support with the anti-noise related to the tent. And then next week, I believe or Wednesday, we take up the entertainment license. So I don't see the harm in some further conversation tonight about the tent permit, because the board may just deadlock and not vote it regardless of what the conversation. This is a standalone issue, though. This is not related to the entertainment license inside the premises, in my mind.
Not inside the premises. I was relating to the noise issue. But
I'm only going back parking lot tent is all I care to talk about tonight.
Mr.
But that's your call.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. McCaskill's point, generally the conversation over the last two hearings focused not on music, which would be an entertainment license issue, but on patron noise. And obviously, the establishment and its ownership and management want to be good neighbors. They reached out to the neighbors to try and invite a conversation to discuss their proposed improvements to management and operation to ensure compliance with reducing patron noise. Unfortunately, the neighbors were not inclined to meet with management at this time, which was really disappointing given the fact that last week ownership did express the desire to be good neighbors. The tent, with respect to the tent's operation, the establishment is willing to offer the following improvements to its operational process to help reduce crowd noise. The first is that in the tent, the last seating will occur at 10 p.m. And that's important because that means that patrons that were seated earlier and may finish, at 10:05 p.m., that table will remain empty. So from 10 o'clock on, more and more and more of the seating capacity from diners that had sat prior to 10 p.m. will vacate their seats and the seats will be empty. So the number of patrons in the tent as the night proceeds will reduce dramatically. That has a direct correlation to patron noise. Secondly, we are proposing that the tent close at midnight. So there will be regardless of the operating hours of the establishment, the tent will close at midnight. The staff are going to be fully instructed and educated on making sure that patrons are aware of patron noise and the need to limit their noise to respect the neighbors. And as a result, we're looking at essentially moving all patrons out of the tent when they're done dining, either into the establishment or onto the outdoor deck as permitted by the guidance. But as the board is well aware, we're looking to the town to be partners in this, that the board has repeatedly indicated its desire to be partners with businesses and to do all that they can to ensure the safety of patrons. This is a public health issue. The tent is temporary. We are all in this together. And we simply ask that the board afford the establishment the opportunity to demonstrate, because it has notice of complaints, that it will do all that it can to ensure a reduction in patron noise and will take very costly steps to improve their outdoor space and their operation to be able to limit that patron noise. However, the tent, its size was previously approved by the board. There's been no expansion. There is no expansion of outdoor seating beyond the capacity of the restaurant. We're simply shifting seating from inside to the tent. And the benefit of that, of course, is that patrons, regardless of the current guidance, are still not willing to go inside. They still want to have a safe outdoor dining space. And that tent is necessary to serve that public need. It is temporary and it is part of the governor's guidance. It was approved by the board. It was automatically extended by the board. And efforts now to try and take away the tent, I won't even get into the legal issues associated with that. I'm simply suggesting that the board take an action vote tonight to approve that tent, because the location of the tent is being moved to the extent physically possible, and that the ownership is taking all steps necessary, reasonably necessary, to improve the acoustics of the location, to minimize patron noise, but still also provide a safe place for people to gather who are not willing to dine inside. There are still many, many patrons who are unwilling to dine inside, and we don't have enough room, the establishment does not have enough room to be able to offer socially distant dining options on the rear deck. The tent is the only location that it can responsibly adhere to the guidance to do that. But it will do everything that it can to reduce patron noise and be a good neighbor. Thank you.
So you're arguing, and I understand the business aspect, but you're arguing that we start now as a good neighbor when we had difficulty this past year. And, I wish I had confidence that was to be, but I'll hear from the rest of the comments. Michael?
Ray, thank you for the diagram. Can you just answer how many seats that the Port Restaurant has inside?
The Port is licensed for 85 seats, and that includes an offset seating plan to be able to shift seats inside and outside. But their maximum seating capacity, as approved by the town, is 85. And if you'll note on the drawing, they have established where they can sort of disperse that throughout the property to stay within that 85 person seating capacity limit.
Okay, Ray, do you have any idea how many are just inside? I understand the moving of tables. We did the same thing for the Ember. What is the actual inside capacity of chairs?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to confer with my clients. However, the way that the seating is constructed inside is it is largely fixed booths, so they cannot be moved to afford socially distant dining, which significantly and severely limits the amount of interior dining available. Obviously, people aren't allowed to sit at the bar. They have to be from the main bar. They have to be distant there as well. So in each location, I think there may be 4 booths, which is, you know, I would have to, I'm guessing 16 to 24 tables, which at the size of this establishment is just simply not financially available to the restaurant to even be open to serve that limited number of patrons.
Okay, Ray, I would just say that I would certainly debate the booths and being able to properly social distance. I for one, have not missed an opportunity to go out to dinner at many restaurants, and they're making it work inside. I'll move on to the seating plan in your chart, unrelated to the back parking lot, if I may. Out front,
Yes.
in front of the building, out front, we have a total of 12 seats. So looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 6 two-tops. So that's 12 out front. Out back, and I'll just reference the Naughty Bar, in the Naughty Bar area, and on the deck, you've listed a total of 32 seats, 4, 4, 4, and 4 on the far side, the fence line of the neighbors, and then 6, 6, and 4 up on top of the patio. So a total of 32 seats out there, bringing that total to 44. One thing that we've never discussed in any of our hearings, and I don't see it on any plan, but I do know it exists unless it's been removed in the last year, is the rooftop table, which I believe consists of 8 chairs. And I believe you access that through the upstairs apartment, but it's actually a rooftop table, and I think it's noted as a VIP table. Does that still exist, Ray?
There are no rooftop seatings. That's a private apartment. So there is no table upstairs. I don't know if in years past it was used as VIP, but there's no table up there. It's exclusively used by Jared Brackett, who that's his apartment. So there's no table. That's not approved as part of the licensed premise.
Okay.
To your comment about the sidewalk seating, Mr. McCaskill, although this drawing depicts 12 seats out there, you may recall that Megan Eldridge, when she was the health director, there were concerns about the proximity of tables next to the sidewalk. And my understanding is that the port only used 2 tables for a total of 4 seats out front. Likewise, although depicted on this drawing, and again, this was a proposed drawing that was done prior to actual service last year. And so the question of whether or not those seats are even available on the sidewalk, I think there are only 2 tables there for a total of 4 seats. Those are tiny two-tops that are sort of in the inset bay windows on the establishment. But given the proximity of the sidewalk, they were not used exhaustively last summer. Likewise, on the rear deck, although there are 32 seats depicted there, because of the amount of foot traffic and the staff bringing takeout orders back and forth, they limited the use of those tables on the rear deck as well, which is why the tent was so important, because patrons did not want to dine. Although that was outside, they wanted to dine in the tent because they felt that was a more socially distant atmosphere.
Okay, so Ray, I'll save some of my comments for the next public hearing and or the next venue that we all talk in. And I think you probably see where I'm going with this. It's my understanding that there's 80 plus room for 80 plus inside. There's room for 44 outside, and if we want to get into carving up the front, because they're depicted on the newest diagram, and unless I hear from our health agent that that's not okay, the tables still actually sit out there, and I think it's a very nice look for the restaurant, by the way. But we're looking at a total of 44, and to your point about traffic, Ray, you know, as we navigate, and I don't know if you get where I'm going, but the compromise is a great word for me. And as we try and navigate this, I'm looking at 160 plus seats if they choose to use all the seats if we approve the tent. And just give me a little latitude here. The tent, which I'm not sure if you've been afforded the beach ball video yet, but I finally got it today. At every single one of those tent tables, anyone that I could count, there was more than 4 people at those tables. And I could be wrong, and again, we could debate that later, but I don't see how it's a compromise in any way, shape, or form for us to be considering that tent with that many tables with the understanding that you're gonna clear it out by 12. And I did take the time today to call several other restaurants to see how they sat in the tent, when they sat in the tent, when the last serving was, and really kind of what their feeling was on where people, what time they exited last year. So other than the trees, Ray, the tree wall, I'm not sure I'm seeing a huge compromise. And one thing I've extended in the past is, why not take that outdoor expanded service and slide it into where, as much of it into where that naughty bar is as possible, because that to me is again another argument for how we got to this place for Wednesday night. But why not shift that inside that fence and create a barrier across the back there to really give parking lot separation and as much noise separation as we can from those neighbors?
Mr. McCaskill, I appreciate that. I don't, you didn't share with me what the comments were from the other licensees, and I appreciate you reaching out and asking to tour the space last week. It's unfortunate that you weren't able to do so, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. But I'm encouraged that you're willing to do that because, as you know, the board has a statutory obligation to visit spaces annually to make sure that they comply with their licensed premise. I don't think that's been done here, and I think that's contributing to the sense of confusion about the outdoor operation. Respectfully, moving spaces to the outdoor deck is not feasible right now. It's not feasible under the current guidance. We're not able to put that amount of seating on the outdoor deck and still provide for socially distant dining. Likewise, regardless of how many seats may be depicted on here, the offset seating plan approved by the Board of Health with respect to the septic system limits the number of seats to 85. It doesn't matter if there are 200 seats available. The establishment is only permitted to seat 85 people at a time. So in order to do that in the most socially responsible and safe distant area, the outdoor tent is the only way to do that, regardless of how many seats are available inside. Patrons don't want to dine inside. And I think it's inappropriate for this board to force patrons to choose indoor dining here at the expense of their public health.
Joe, you made that same point. Joe, point of order.
That's Ray.
Ray, sorry, I'm thinking of Joe. Ray, we've heard that discussion. We've got that part. Let me ask Joe, excuse me for getting the wrong name. Joe, you had a comment?
I do, Mr. Chairman, and a comment and also information for the board. It's been and remains the town's position that the seating capacity for the establishment question this evening is 84. That's stated on the license, and that comports with the Board of Health and septic requirements. So it's been the town's position, it remains the town's position, and the town disagrees with the assertion that the capacity is 85. It's 84. Further, there was a reference to the former health director and guidance regarding the chairs out front. I just want to remind the board that she's on the call and is certainly ready, willing, and able to answer any questions if the board has any.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Mr. Powers, if I'm mistaken as to one seat on the capacity, I took that off of the license that was posted on the wall, so it may have simply been a typo.
Michael, do you have more?
No, I think Ray and I could go back and forth. And Ray, quite frankly, I appreciated your willingness to shift your schedule and meet me on a Sunday. And it really wasn't until I learned of the personal attack on my family that I decided, myself and my family, that I decided that I wasn't going to put myself in a position to have any more false allegations made of me. So, and just further, I've been to the establishment. I think it has been a couple years, but my recollection of what I saw At least, I'm not sure about the 4, 4, and 4 table out back, but definitely had increased the seating on the deck. I would again completely disagree with you on the number or the ability to get, say, 32 seats in that space and be able to socially distance and to keep the servers from being safely able to serve food there. So I guess that would be again an argument for another venue. I'm not sure if, because that's the music area and because that's what we've designated kind of as the entertainment spot, that there's an unwillingness to make that table dining, and I think certainly that's a good argument of yours. But again, I'm trying to compromise. I did hear last week, and I'll conclude my comments after this. Ray, I did hear a willingness by you, and I would imagine that you were speaking for your clients at the very end of the meeting, a willingness to work with the neighbors. What I heard through testimony, though, and what I heard through the manager of record, or the manager on duty, or whatever Jake Domos is, what I heard is we had no violations. We did nothing wrong. I work 100 hours a week. I don't recall any beach balls. The beach ball thing is very real. The overcrowded tent with just drinks in front of people is very real. The noise complaints, call them violations, don't call them violations because you were not violated from the board. But whether it's 15 calls or 11 calls, it's bouncing around the inside of my head right now which one it was, is significant. And it may not be significant to the owners of the restaurant, and I appreciate the willingness to work with people, but it's significant for the people that live around it. And whether your clients think that they're being picked on, or one of the comments was that the people like the other establishments better or not, there was an issue. So this board is taking up a lot of time discussing this and offering some compromise, but I'm not seeing compromise on the other side myself, and I think, quite frankly, quality of life, once people talk about quality of life being ruined and not being able to enjoy their own homes, I think everybody needs to take a step back and say, what if this was my backyard? And I'll leave it at that.
You're exact.
I'm willing for some compromise, and I've offered some things, and I've kept an open dialogue, and I think everybody's clear where I'm at this point.
Thank you, Michael. Ed?
Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, I'd like to.
Ray,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. If I could quickly respond to Mr. McCaskill before Mr. McManus speaks, and that way everyone's comments are fresh in my head.
As long as you're not repeating what you've already said.
No, sir. I hear Mr. McCaskill's comment about trying to offer a compromise. I suggested to the board significant operational improvements that were designed directly to reduce patron noise. We've offered to communicate with the neighbors. They're not responsive. I can appreciate
Ray,
the view.
let me stop you. I ask you not to repeat your assertions. You've already made those assertions. Ed?
And what Mr. McCaskill is saying is that he's not hearing
Ray,
compromise
excuse me.
From the establishment. That's simply not true. But he's also not making a proposal. He's suggesting to eliminate the tent entirely.
Ray,
the tent is temporary. Mr. Chairman, allow me
moving on
to
now.
finish, please. Mr. Chairman,
more.
if you'll
You
allow me
made
to
that.
finish, I will be very brief.
I don't want you.
Mr. Chair, this is not a hearing. You could recognize or not recognize.
Ray, we're
whomever you
moving on now.
want to.
You've made these points over and over again. We understand it. Ed?
Well, I think I've made this point before, having owned and operated a cafe and pub in a heavily residential area. It was on a commercial street, but the buildings on 3 of the 4 sides were all residential. I know a responsible manager and operator can operate that successfully, even if they have a very vibrant, noisy, and entertainment schedule, by reaching out consistently and proactively to the neighbors. And I'm just amazed that in this instance, that's not happened in the past. And I, don't see anything at coming in at this late hour that encourages me to expect that it's going to happen in the future.
Thank you, Ed. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We asked this question at the hearing, Mr. Tomlinson. Actually, we asked it of Jake Domos, but does anybody know who controls their Instagram page? Because I didn't come up with this 2 outdoor bars on my own. It was being advertised as late as this past week on their site, which I absolutely have no control over, as having 2 indoor and 2 outdoor bars. I would say it behooves you, given what you are maintaining and your license says, to make sure that they correct that.
Sorry, Mr. Howell, I was muted by the organizer. Would you like me to respond to that statement?
I would, please.
Okay. First and foremost, for the reasons Mr. McCaskill stated as to why he will not visit the premise because of the pending litigation, I'm not going to discuss here today who controls the Instagram. If people rely on Instagram for information, then they are of the mindset that they believe everything on the internet.
That's
the
not
licensed
responsive
premise
to
is
what I
approved by
asked.
this board. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, please allow me to finish.
Yep, you can finish.
The licensed premise is, as approved by this board and the ABCC, includes 1 outdoor bar, regardless of what is said on Instagram. And with respect to late hour or 11th hour notice, there's no more late notice than what the licensee has in this case. And it is asking for the opportunity to be a good neighbor with the information that was late noticed to them.
Ray, I would counter that this discussion's been going on since last fall.
Mr. Chair,
We've
that was
had
not
packets
responsive
going
to the
on.
question asked.
And this wasn't responsive to the Instagram. I guess the question is, how can you have advertising more than what you're saying is real?
This is a restaurant site.
Let me ask you,
I'm sorry.
Ray, can I ask you a question just for clarification?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Howell was speaking over you, and I couldn't hear your question.
Well, I haven't asked it yet, but I will now. We have discussions,
Okay.
I think Michael's brought up on capacity, and I'm a little confused because there's, as town administrators mentioned, the total capacity is 84 people, but it doesn't compare to the number of seats you show in your diagram, both outside and inside. And I gather from your statement is that there are more seats, but you actually control the use of those seats to 84. That's, with everything else going on, can management do that?
Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, that's the obligation of management and ownership to do that. The septic system is limited to what it can handle, and yes, it does control those seats. Its point of sale system knows how many people are seated at any one time, so they can control those number of seats. To your question, Mr. Chairman, seating capacity is different than occupant load, and that is an issue that this board has struggled with. You made a comment about this has been something that you've been discussing since last fall. It hasn't been a discussion with the licensee, and I don't mean to belittle that point, but this is an important issue because these complaints were not brought to the licensee's attention until this March, after last season. So the only thing it can do is try and give the board confidence that it is equipped to be able to remedy those issues going forward. As this board has noted, it's going to take a zero tolerance position with respect to noise, and the licensee should be afforded that opportunity. If there's going to be swift action by the board, it can take that action under the noise bylaw. We're talking with patron noise that was to be expected under the governor's guidance. And this is a necessary relief that's available, that the governor has said should be made available to establishments to protect their livelihoods. We are in a state of pandemic. This is temporary. It may be over sooner than we know, but the establishment has already paid for this tent. And respectfully, Mr. Chairman, the occupancy of the property is in excess of 300 persons, regardless of the seating capacity at 84. And that information can be provided to the town later by a stamped fire engineer. But all I'm suggesting to you is the seating capacity remains at 84. There is an offset seating plan, as Ms. Eldridge is well aware, that allows the establishment to flow patrons either inside or outside for seating. Patrons do not want to dine inside. They want to dine outside. And if we are going to take away the tent, you are putting, quite frankly and respectfully, the concerns of a few neighbors, which can be mitigated, and there's an opportunity to do that, over the public health, the need for public health and safe, distant dining. Thank you.
Where we are right now is, for the board, does anyone wish to make a motion to reconsider?
I would make a motion to reconsider outdoor tables, expansion of outdoor tables.
Is there a second?
For discussion, I second it.
Okay, Michael?
So my
I'm
proposal,
sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who seconded. Was that Mr. McManus?
Mr. Manis?
so my proposal is very much what I was talking about, and I think that somebody's
There's,
Ray, I'm not talking, I'm waiting for someone to be muted on the call.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
I appreciate their TV show, but I can't concentrate. Okay, thank you, Jamie. I would support expanded outdoor table dining, though I do not agree with Ray's assessment of what they need and what they're willing to manage. And I also do not agree with them that patrons do not want to dine inside. I took my mother to lunch yesterday at a restaurant, and they did have a tent. I think they had 6 tables under the tent, which were full, and the entire restaurant was full, and the tables were separated so that people could eat inside, and there was lots of laughs, lots of smiles, some with masks, some without. So I do share a different view with them on that. And I think what they're asking for, the tent, based on what the patron noise is, because I think we can still accept that there's going to be patron noise, is too much. And I think that which we're going to get into some more of this conversation, I think that the area for outdoor table expansion at the Port Restaurant already exists. And I believe that there's, creatively, I believe that there could be more. Right now, they're listing 32 out back and 12 out front. And I think that the board, if there is an order from the Board of Health on the 6 two-tops out front, it's something that the board could take up. And based on what I'm seeing on the diagram, I don't believe that we've ordered them to take any of that out of there. And I'm looking at 32 out back with the possibility of more. Just looking at by scale, there's no way we can't get proper social distancing in that area there. And then I think it would be incumbent upon the owners of the restaurant, management of the restaurant, to determine when the other part of the business starts. And given the diagram, I think that there's still room for a band up on that deck, with some expansion. So I, for one, would support expanded outdoor table dining for this restaurant, with some creativity behind the building in the Naughty Bar area, but not a tent in the
but not the tent.
Not the tent in the parking lot. I think absolutely I would support a tent in that area in the back, but I would not support it in the parking lot.
Any other discussion? Don?
Yeah, this motion doesn't pertain to that. This motion pertains to reconsideration of the tent. Just to point that out to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so my motion and what's on the floor is to reconsideration of a tent.
Right.
But then that would open us up for this further discussion. Ed?
No, but I have some thoughts on if this motion passes, but I don't really. I seconded the motion, so.
We have a motion and a second. I'll go with a roll call. Ed?
I'd vote aye.
Don?
No.
Michael?
I'd vote aye.
I'll vote aye. Because I think this may be a mixed blessing to you, though, Ray, because I think we're going to want to have some pretty severe restrictions going forward. Michael?
Just to be clear, now that that's passed, so the next agenda item
Is to reconsider.
is to reconsider. So without the extra conditions, which I believe that we can add the extra conditions, that's what I just explained what I would vote for. So I can make a motion to that effect, or other board members can chime in, but that would be the only thing that I would support.
Michael, let me just clarify with Ray. Do you understand what the proposal is?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. There's no proposal. There was simply a motion, a second, and a vote. I don't hear a proposal yet. If the board is going to make a motion to add restrictions, then I would encourage the board to consult Robert's rules on how to do that.
There are no current, Mr.
The-
Chair.
yeah, that's
There are
not-
no current restrictions because there's no current approval.
Let me, Ray, let me ask you to listen then, and Michael, could you repeat and you can make an informal motion if you wish, and that way we'll move ahead.
I will if.
Sorry, Mr.
I will if Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. What I've heard is a motion to reconsider the approval of the tent, and that has passed.
But now,
There is no notice, Mr. Chairman, before you
there is.
about imposing conditions on the tent.
There is. You have the agenda in front of you?
Mr. Chair, this merely releases us from our previous vote denying the tent.
tent, yes.
There still would have to be an affirmative vote of some sort of what we would approve. This only got you to open up a discussion that
So-
was previously adjudicated.
Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, the vote at the last hearing where every other establishment that was before you was approved pursuant to the court's, pursuant to the board's
Ray,
automatic expansion.
you're repeating
Over.
yourself
Mr.
now.
Chairman,
Ray,
you asked me what was my understanding of the
Ray.
last vote. I'm telling you what was.
I move reconsideration of my last motion to reconsider expansion of outdoor table dining at this point.
and we had a second to that, and we voted on it.
Yes, you can. You just can't make the motion.
And that was reconsideration, excuse me.
Ray,
Last.
Ray,
the
now we're
last
moving
meeting-
on.
I'm
Mr.
rescinding
Chairman?
what I just made.
You're,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Ray, no,
On April 20, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on April 27th.
you may not.
Amy, will you mute him?
Mute Ray. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it may help the board, what I believe I heard Selectman McCaskill just say is that the action that the board took at 7:30 PM tonight, which was reconsideration of
Reconsider.
your previous action at an earlier meeting,
Right.
Selectman McCaskill now wishes to reconsider that action,
That's correct.
perhaps for
Okay.
the purpose of rescinding or something along those lines. Yes, the motion for reconsideration must be made by somebody in the prevailing side, so that would be Selectmen McCaskill, McManus, or Ballantyne. All members can vote on
Okay.
reconsideration.
And so you're reconsidering to start over again then?
I'm reconsidering my motion.
Okay, Ed, you have a second for that?
I'll second it, although I believe, it's my belief under the rules of order that any of us could make the second. It's
Okay.
just,
We have
an
a,
affirmative member has to make the
Right.
motion to reconsider.
okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
And I'm aye.
Okay, it's off the table.
And Michael, you wish to make a second motion then?
No, I was just pulling my motion off the table. All my motion did was create more argument from Attorney Tomlinson. I had previously to making that motion to reconsider outdoor table dining, or expansion of outdoor table service, so that we could have a conversation and make a proposal to bring that noise inside the gate.
Yeah.
And instead, Mr. Tomlinson took that we were done, and that we had made a motion to reconsider the tent in the back parking lot, and
So-
the agenda to me is extremely clear. We voted it down last week, we made a vote tonight.
Is
My
there-
motion was to reopen it,
That-
to have discussion, to offer some sort of compromise. And that is obviously not how Attorney Tomlinson received it, and there's two agenda items on here,
At-
there's crystal clear to
at-
me, but
At present, does anyone care to make a motion?
No.
Hearing none, that ends that discussion. We have no reason to go to item B, and we'll go then to contracts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you'll see in your packet, bear with me for a moment, I apologize.
So I don't want to cut you off, but Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to execute change order number 1 with Robert B. Auer Company for Round Cove Concrete Bulkgate Repairs for $19,874.73 as presented in the packet.
Second. Joe, could you just give me, there was nothing in the packet that, what was entailed in that? Is that just additional concrete, or, was there something unforeseen? I'm just curious. You don't need to get it to me tonight. You can get it to me later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got our harbor master who has magically appeared. and perhaps he may be inclined to, and
John, I'm just
More
curious,
capable than I.
because I know that was an interesting project of, doing the concrete underwater and all that. I was just wondering, very briefly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Rendon, Harbor Master. The ramp is complete. Part of the ramp project was replacement of a section of the bulkhead, and that's been done. But there's an adjacent bulkhead that ties to that new bulkhead that is failing, and it has failed even more so with the work that has been done on site. And so this is to repair with rebar and concrete the adjacent bulkhead. It's not a replacement bulkhead. It's just a repair, because in my mind and the mind of the contractor and the engineer, it's a safety issue. The top of the bulkhead is crumbling. It's old. I do have on the capital plan in future years to relook at the entire bulkhead system. But this needs to be done while we have the contractor there to improve that section of the bulkhead.
Okay, thank you, John. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, sir.
I'll go with a roll call then. Michael?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Don? And I'm aye.
Mr. Chair,
Sure, please.
I move that we execute a contract with Partner Solutions General Contracting Corp. for Comfort Station janitorial services for $51,587,039.
Second.
Second. Joe, any comment on this?
just that you can see when the bids went out, the costs came back in excess of $50,000, therefore,
Yep,
the board would
really.
be the authority to sign
Okay.
or approve.
Michael?
Only question is, Joe, is any of this reimbursable under the
CARES Act?
CARES Act?
I wouldn't be able to say definitively this evening, but we can circle back on that question and get back to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Goes roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Don? Aye. Continue, please, Michael.
Mr. Chair, I move that we execute a contract with Van Ness, Hangen, Bruslin, Inc. for Route 28, Saquatucket, Harwich Port Sidewalk Design, Engineering Services for $167,550.
Okay. Discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Michael,
if
I'll
I
give you
could,
a comment.
just for the record, many folks may know them more colloquially as VHB.
Much better.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that. I'll take a roll call then. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm aye.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to execute firefighter safety equipment grant award contract with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Fire Services for $12,172 as presented.
Second.
Second, and Joe, we'll add our compliments to Chief and whoever else worked on this. Any other comments?
Just that I know Chief would want to emphasize the work of the staff that he has that does great work. I believe it's Christine that does the work, and she is a whiz at all this stuff, so we'll make sure that that's recorded.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm aye. Town Administrator's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. All joking aside, as I indicated, we are 357 days away from what would be anticipated as a, quote, normal annual town meeting to occur on a Monday evening indoors at the community center. And I bring that up because as we close out the books on the 2021 annual town meeting year and fiscal year '22, the Assistant Town Administrator, Finance Director, and I will be reaching out to department heads, boards, committees, and commission chairs to start the dialogue on everything to do with the development of anything to come before a town meeting. So specifically, that would be, we're be engaging in discussions on operating budgets, presumptive community preservation applications, and certainly capital. The effort is certainly for fiscal year '23, but also then to get into a further broader discussion for the additional 4 years after that. As I've said to the board many times, but I think it bears repeating this evening on the record, so that I can develop a 5-year outlook for the board as it relates to operating budgets, capital budgets, and perhaps envision some relief through community preservation.
Yeah.
And with regard to community preservation, the also expectation would be that, unlike in years past, perhaps any applications of the town would first go before the board, for the board to generally either endorse or understand that a certain department or committee would be going forward with that application. So looking to get as much information in front of the board before we get too far afield of that process.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. And to that comment, and Michael, to your comment, CPC has their own schedule, but we can act before that schedule to bring things forward for discussion. And so that's, both of you, that's a good reminder of that.
Thank you, and I've certainly been in constant contact with Chairman Nixon of CPC, and not to speak for him, but I think he takes some relief that administration would be doing that effort ahead of their application schedule.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if I may, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you know, the calendar tells us that in 3 weeks from today, it is the unofficial beginning of summer. Of course, we will be past Memorial Day holiday after 3 weeks from today. So for that reason, administration will be working with public safety and any number of representatives from the regulatory authorities within the town, and resume our annual discussion with licensees before we get into the full license season that we refer to as the summer. So more information will be delivered to licensees, and I hope to give a more formal update to the board next week on your agenda before we commit staff to that effort. But just put everyone on notice that that annual license discussion for the summer season is coming shortly.
You brought up the summer season. We've normally in the summer taken other weeks off. And we didn't last year for all obvious reasons, but I'm hoping we can move back to that this summer and not to have some weeks off. Don?
While I appreciate the comment, we're going to be reorganizing in
I
3
didn't say to
weeks.
do it now, but we'll bring it back.
And one more item, Mr. Chairman, if I may. It's a sad comment, if I could, but I just wanted to inquire of the board if you would be looking to discuss perhaps scheduling a special election to fill the vacancy caused by the passing of Selectman Ford, and if you wanted to do that at your next meeting.
Yes.
Again, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is, in all deference to Mr. McManus, he's not going to be here after next meeting. I think that that's something that the new board should take up.
I'm fine with that, but the meeting after that, I do want to get, I think we should get it
That would
started.
be fine with me, but I think that people who have a horse in the race should actually be ones who have the discussion about it.
Don, just for clarification though, what horse do we have in this race other than to set the schedule? We're not nominating people, nor are we,
No.
it's just setting the schedule.
No, but you're talking about somebody who's not going to be here for one more meeting, making that decision when you're closing out the person who's going to be here for 3 years.
No, I get that point. I'm just saying that we don't,
That's all I'm saying.
well, we can, Ed?
You know, I served with Mr. Ford for the time he was with us, and I would like to participate in ensuring that process of replacing him happens. And I know, quite honestly, he would want that done expeditiously and with as little fuss as possible. I've talked with his wife about this and informing her that might be an issue that the board would be taking up soon, just so she was forewarned and not caught off guard. You know. So.
I would, Michael?
I would just say, I mean, I think we're talking about this too much at this point.
Yeah,
We know we have to do it. But the only thing I would ask is maybe somebody, if we could get a memo outlining the process.
Well, that was
I think
gonna be-
Don's point is, and I think it's related to a lot of business going forward, is not to do it because we only have 1 week left of a sitting selectman. I understand that, But if, the sooner we can lay out the process
Well,
and a rough time frame on dates, for me at least, I'd like to get some notice and some idea of what the process is.
and Michael, and that's where I'm going with this too. We should have that as soon as we can so we know what's going on.
All I was saying is the actual date. The process is very important because it is a process.
We have to
It's
back it
not
up
like
and so we have it.
2 weeks from now, you can hold an election. That's not going to happen.
No.
That
Okay,
concludes my report, Mr.
thank you.
Chairman.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to defer to Michael for more about this, but we need to get on the agenda for next week for the investigative
Okay.
committee
yeah.
that was established. And I want to publicly express my frustration with KP Law with not wishing to cooperate with Mr. McCaskill. It's not up to their election. They work for the board. And if the board is asking them a question with a duly organized, under the charter investigative committee, then it's incumbent upon them to reply to us. There is no, we can't talk to you, and there might be a legal problem.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Ed?
No?
Michael?
I'll just, while it's fresh, I'll expand on Don's comments. I've to date received nothing from KP Law.
KP Law.
I did ask Attorney Sharin to provide me any and everything that she had weeks ago. And I did have a follow-up conversation with John Giorgio and asked him what I was looking for. I believe John Giorgio has reached out to Town Administrator Joe Powers, and they've had a brief conversation about it. But I would just ask for the board's support tonight to reemphasize the vote that was taken over a month ago, that the board has an investigative team. We are the ultimate authority, which is Don Howell and myself, and I would ask Joe to relay that to Attorney Giorgio and all other attorneys involved. And if we don't ramp this thing up soon, because all we're doing is giving the other side time to get everything in a row, I want this brought forward fast, and it's not happening fast enough. I've said it to Joe, and I'll say it again. We've given a fair amount of latitude because of town meeting and because of the hearings that we've been involved in and how busy we are, but that time's up for me. And residents want answers, and we have an obligation to figure out what's going on and what went wrong. And I would ask that the board affirm the decision of that night, that the board is doing an investigation and we get full cooperation and quick cooperation.
And more specifically, there are other law firms out there, and I think that needs to be conveyed to them. This was not asking, please, can you do this? This was something where Michael had called on behalf of the board, and the board employs them. So it's not up to them to decide who they want to listen to.
Joe, your opinion, can we invite KP Law to the next meeting to, on the agenda? To respond to
Certainly,
this?
and I guess I would just emphasize that it wouldn't be an invitation per se. It doesn't have to be.
But it doesn't have to be executive session or anything. We can have an open session discuss.
And if I may,
discuss this.
we're not to that point yet. I don't want to waste anyone's time, and I don't need to have the same conversation that we're going to have as a full board. We need to put the idea before the full board. We just need cooperation and some speed. We pay them a lot of money. They are our counsel,
Okay.
and they need to respond quickly. And then once we get that response along with Joe's information, we will present to the board and then invite people in as we need to.
My only point is, Michael, that if it's not forthcoming, then we should bring them in and all go.
I think Joe's got the message, and he can make it loud and clear.
That's all I
I
was
do believe I understand.
I just don't want to waste any more of the board's time until we have something concrete to discuss.
Ed, you had another comment?
Yeah, when Michael brought this up, and volunteered himself, and I suggested that it would probably be best to have 2 members of the board. You know, I at the time would have loved to have volunteered, but what I feared was going to happen is this was going to take longer than what was going to be my term in office to take, and so Mr. Howell was the obvious person to ask to fill in for us, but it's an incredibly important issue.
Yeah. No.
That it be resolved, and that the committee that we appointed do their investigation and bring that report back to the full Board of Selectmen so an action can be taken.
Okay.
I have one more thing.
Okay.
Joe mentioned how many days until the next town meeting, and he spoke of going back to evenings. One request that I'm going to make of next year's board is to have the conversation, as requested by several taxpayers, voters, is to consider a Saturday town meeting, one-day town meeting, daytime, to try and draw maybe more people to come. And I know a fair amount of seniors, thank you, Jamie, a fair amount of seniors don't like to be out that late at night. And I personally think that we should at least explore a one-day weekend town meeting.
Yep, agreed. Okay, if nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd make the motion to adjourn.
Second. Don? Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm aye. Thank you.